So I have a strong general anime opinion, which goes like this. I believe that there is no must-watch anime, but some get close. For example, if you've been watching seasonals and you want to dip your toes into some older anime, if you would then ask me what one anime should you watch, I would tell you, that's silly, just watch whatever you want. And after you've put me in a headlock, I would tell you to watch Shiropako, the anime about making anime. This is when talking broadly about anime. If you want to get into a genre, let's say mecha, then yeah, maybe you should watch at least one Mobile Suit Gundam anime. There is one exception though. If you've never seen anime and you would ask me that if there is one anime you should definitely watch, then I would suggest that you give Frieren Beyond Journey's End a shot. This is not an ironclad rule, and to tell you how fickle and ever-changing my choice is, after Winter 2026 season ends, I will most likely recommend Journal with Wits over Frieren, but that's enough of that. I've already name-dropped 3 anime that have nothing to do with this video, so let's talk about Frieren, and the genre you might be familiar with but never understood why some might enjoy it, Iyashikei. But you're in luck, because if you enjoyed Frieren, then you might have a whole new world open up to you. Let me give you a short summary of Frieren and some of its relevant parts. Frieren Beyond Journey's End is a fantasy story about, well, Frieren, an elf who was in the hero's party that took down the Demon King. Pretty basic stuff, right? Well yeah, but what makes Frieren interesting is that the anime starts after the hero's party has already made it back home and retired. The title Beyond Journey's End was the clue. The story of Frieren really kicks off after the funeral of Himmel the hero, who died of old age. Frieren being an elf and long-living race, and during the events of episode 1, it is shown how skewed her concept of time is, as she has already lived for 1,000 years and will live for thousands more, but as weak humans will barely make it close to 100 years if we're lucky, unless you're literally the strongest human priest who ever lived. The years Himmel was part of Frieren's life was nothing but a blimp to her, but even after that relatively short amount of time, Frieren regrets that she never really got to know Himmel, and as an elf, did not really understand human customs during their journey, and how much Himmel influenced Frieren and her worldview that she shares during her next journey. End of a journey is the start of a new one, and after Frieren meets Fern, a human child gifted with magical talent that the previously mentioned human priest Hater had adopted. Frieren teaches Fern magic and other life lessons and embarks on a new journey with her after Hater joins Himmel. On the way they pick up Stark, a warrior that was trained by Aizen, the dwarf warrior of Frieren's previous party, who is still alive, breaking this grim cycle. Together they set forward on their journey to reach Soul's Aureole, the resting place of the dead, so they can communicate with the dead. The journey will take years, and on the way Fern and Stark visibly age. They meet new and old friends and enemies, take on odd jobs, all the while the memory of Himmel guides Frieren toward, as the many flashbacks demonstrate. Frieren is a story how we should treasure the time we spent together, no matter how fleeting. Frieren is a story where journey matters more than the destination, as our gang, both new and old, spent arguably more time on doing side quests than actually traveling to their destination, which might be bad in the context of Hero's Party, but like Himmel the hero would point out, you need to help people's lives in small, more personal ways, as slaying the Demon King might bring peace, but that doesn't mean that demons as a whole are vanquished. Frieren is a story about forming deep connections and understanding others, and the persistent motif are the many Himmel flashbacks Frieren has. But that's not all. as we see Fern and Stark reminiscence about their family and masters. So it would be accurate to say that the struggles we had in the past leads us to overcome our fears in the future. Frieren, Fern and Stark might be a party, but they embody the found family trope that began with Fern and Hayter and with Stark and Hazen. Another motif are the demons, and how they simply cannot understand human morals and bonding. But I will talk about them later. Grief is also a very big theme of Frieren, and how our characters deal with it or don't, as all of our characters have lost someone close to them. No matter how powerful you are in this setting, you will deal with your friend, comrade, parent, lover dying, and trying to come to terms and finding healthy ways to cope with that fact that someone you once relied upon is no longer here to offer warmth when the world is cold. This leads us to many episodes, where in the overall narrative-wise, very little happens episode to episode, as our characters will run into some new character that could just be a villager that Frieren met 60 years ago, now all grown up, and seeing how the Himmels and Heroes Party's victory affected their lives. And we also get few moments where Frieren realizes that she fumbled Himmel. Then in another episode we might just see Frieren and Fern vanquish a demon, or another spectre, for a grimoire that contains a spell to make all your pancakes fluffy and non-sticky. It's almost mundane, and many before yours truly has called Frieren cozy, anime to watch even if there are bigger plots being played in the background. And there are arcs where the action is in the spotlight, but the small moments are just as memorable and impactful as the merry mage duels or demon battles in Frieren. So much so that you might even hope that they would just stop fighting, so we can go back to more small moments, like when Frieren and Fern take a few weeks to just clear a beach of trash, just in time for a festival. It is a certain kind of feeling when you're feeling healed after you finish an episode. Before we jump into some of the flaws, I want to talk a bit about the absolutely stellar adaptation that Madhouse brought, alongside with the director Keiichiro Sato. Frieren marks his second director work straight after Bocchi the Rock, and that man has struck gold twice. I should mention that pinning the success of an anime production to one person is foolish, and the team at Madhouse deserves as much credit. The material has been elevated with some gorgeous animation and background art, stellar music, and most importantly, the team expanded upon the material they've been given, instead of just adapting the manga panels literally, or for Himmel's sake cut out certain key characters or moments. The easy ones to point out would be all the fight scenes, but I would argue that the team realized that spending tons of effort in these small slice-of-life moments was just as important, perhaps even more important. The highlight has to be this ballroom dance with Fern and Stark, which was just a panel in the original manga. This philosophy continued to season 2, even if Saito himself was just a directing assistant, which should hammer home that making an anime is a team effort. All this effort, but Frieren is not without some elements that I don't personally vibe with, and unfortunately one of the biggest ones are the presence of demons, and how I wish that there were less of them. Just like Frieren. As a villains, demons are the perfect fit. They simply do not understand humanity and forming bonds, so they can never truly understand humanity. Maybe with a great deal of effort they can, but that road is paved with blood. Demons can be interesting, especially when they're used sparingly, and when they force us to ask difficult questions about ourselves. It is shown to us that demons could live without consuming humans for nutriments, but they still choose not to, and when pressed on by this fact, demons will just shrug it off and say, why not? You can see a parallel to our own reality, where we could either cut off meat completely or at least consume less of it, because we don't need to eat meat to survive. Unfortunately, that's usually where the complexities of demons tend to end. They're predators and can't be reasoned with, since they do not understand emotions. They lie, beg, cheat, grovel and intimidate just to get an upper hand over mortal races. They are just not particularly interesting, and I feel that the story would be better without their presence, or if they were relegated to a single of appearances, like during Frieren's flashbacks, or Gual, or perhaps a part of a bigger arc. One of the worst moments happens in Season 2, when a character gets their spine blown out and a huge hole in their chest, and still manages to move and even survive. I know that you're supposed to suspend your disbelief when it comes to brutal damage sustained in anime fights, but this was a bit too much. Another thing I didn't like about Frieren was the first mate's exam arc. It is here to introduce a bunch of new players that will come up later in the story, but it goes on way too long. The content here is solid, but it does outstay its welcome. What I don't consider a flaw, that some others have raised, is that nothing seemingly happens, but to me that is the point of Frieren. It is small little character moments during this long journey that make this show seemingly unique and breath of fresh air, compared to many of its contemporaries in the fantasy genre, and that's without getting into the isekai subgenre of medieval fantasy. Maybe you don't personally like the tropes in Frieren, but if you're not vehemently opposed to them, then I have a hard time seeing why you shouldn't at least enjoy Frieren. It is really hard to find faults with this one. Sharp-eared listeners might have heard me mention seemingly unique when describing Frieren. Well, that's because we are finally getting to the meat of this video. Let's talk about the genre that's filled with characters, moments and tropes, just like in Frieren, where the characters are living their slow quiet life and perhaps embark on a journey. Let's talk about Iyashikeis. The year 1995 was great for Finns, therefore it was also great for the world.
Ja tulee samaan paikkaan, Jotilalauko, ja siellä on! Siinä on paikka, ja sieltä se Lehtinen, hyvin Ville Peltoselle, ja Peltonen vetää!
But it wasn't so great for the Japanese.
Jälleen Jonas Bergqvist.
For this section, I'm citing Paul Roquet's 2009 essay Ambient Literature and the Aesthetics of Calm, Mood Regulation in Contemporary Japanese Fiction. I definitely recommend that you find a copy for yourself if you want to learn more about this subject matter, as I'm barely scraping the surface. The aftermath of two large-scale catastrophes, the Kobe earthquake and the Aum Shinrikyo sarin gas attacks in the early 1995, prompted a desire for Japanese entertainment and products to provide reassurance and calm in these troubled times, or as Paul puts it, a personal means of coping with the contemporary. This prompted a Iyashikei movement that lasts to this day. Mind you, this sort of relaxing art was not invented in the 1995, but has been a talk of scholars in Japan for longer. Yoshimoto Banana's 1988 debut novel Kitchen has been cited by Tokyo's psychiatrists as having calming effect on patients who lack optimism and brightness in their own lives. This was not exclusive to Japan either. As Paul puts it, Brian Eno was in England formulating his idea of ambient music, inspired by the American Music Corporation, using low-volume instrumental music as a means to emotionally condition shoppers. Eno explored the idea outside of a commercial setting. Music is especially important here, as many of the anime we will talk about has some great soundtracks, filled with ambient, cheerful and relaxing music. So Iyashikei media being used as a coping mechanism has existed, and if you can't place your mind on it, on why it works, then you can just think to your own comfort media. Maybe you listen to an album when you're feeling down, or when you just want to relax, and just not think about the world as it is right now. So you just put on some old Simpson episodes where you know the lines by heart. Get in your happy place, so to speak. That is the feeling we are trying to grasp here. As you might have surmised, Iyashikei anime have a very calming and soothing effect on the viewer. They are very character-driven stories, and while there are shows like Aria or Keion, where there is natural narrative end for our characters, and these shows tend to have the most growth in our characters. Iyashikei anime tend to focus on the seemingly mundane activity to breathe new life for our characters. Usually these take the form of a new hobby, or just enjoying your day off, like in Mr. Villain's Day Off. They target that feeling when I or you pick up a new hobby, that exhilarating feeling when you can't wait to be back at home, free from obligation, so we can obsess over it. That sense of freedom and the knowledge that there is a whole new world ready for you to start exploring. The journey is arguably the most important part of these shows, even if the show takes place in the same city. The shows that do have more nation or globe spanning adventures tend to be very set in their characters and very episodic. Think MUSHI-SHI. But of course that is not a hard iron rule, as they definitely travel a lot in Eurocamp, and there is character growth within Eurocamp's characters that you can pinpoint going from season to season. Iyashikei can also just be a story of found families where two characters that have lost part of their family find solace in each other. The stakes are usually very low, but the easygoing nature doesn't mean that heavy topics aren't explored. Dealing with the loss of a loved one is surprisingly common, and not all tales have happy endings, which almost all of our characters in Frieren deal with in one way or another. There are so many dead parents here that you wouldn't believe, but the way the following isekai plus cute girls doing cute things anime handle each of these elements is very different and appropriate for each show. The background music is also very important for these shows, as they set the mood, while our characters might go on minutes on end without any dialogue or narration. It's calming, simple, and wondrous. Iyashikei by their nature are almost impossible to binge watch. Outside of Eurocamp, I can barely watch few episodes before I need a break, since I'm usually very mellow after I finish an episode. This might sound like I'm coping, because this video took so long to make, and yeah, I am. But to be fair to myself, I rarely get the same binge feeling watching Iyashikeis as if I was watching some action or drama anime, where I just have to know what happens next. It might sound counterintuitive to watch something that's designed to make you feel drowsy, but it just works. This leads to the same criticism that Frieren might get, is that sometimes nothing seemingly happens between episode to episode, but in Iyashikeis that is the whole point, to cleanse your palate and relax after a stressful, busy day. That doesn't mean that even Aria can't give you a fright, and MUSHI-SHI is almost horror in how Mushi can really screw your whole existence without any fault of your own. You can probably point out few other critiques of Iyashikeis yourself, and they're not hard to see. Using any media to cope might lead to passivity and negligence in your personal and social struggles, as it becomes too easy to escape into that media and to make yourself feel better. Paul Roquette in his essay quotes two critics, Kuroku Kasua and Ann Serif, who were taking a critical look on Yoshimoto's novel on this very basis. I feel that this is not a unique issue that plagues isekai media alone, and could be used more broadly to define almost any media. And to be fair to both Kuroko and Serif, they were talking how it might lead to apathy on wider social struggles, so their critique goes deeper than mine. However, there are two other angles of critique that Paul brings up from other people which I didn't really even think about before reading his work, so I'll keep this brief. First point comes from Tanaka Satoshi, who paints a picture how a culture driven by Iyashi and therapeutics could lead to an obsession with perfect health, to the point of denying the aging and frailty to the body. A more foreboding critique comes from Okuma Eiichi, who brings up how Japanese right-wing groups have used Iyashi discourse to try and remove Japanese atrocities from the school textbooks, so children don't have to learn about Japan's past and get stressed about it. And Yaki Kosuke in his book Iyashi as Discrimination argues that overemphasis on Iyashi can lead to avoidance rather than tolerance of those that are different from you. Well, that was fun. And I told you this little history lesson as to show that not even seemingly so innocent and calm is without its faults and deeper critiques, and if you want to learn more, then any of these writers I quoted Paul quoting would be a good place to start if you want to learn more. But now, let's get back to how this loops back to this grandma. I mean, you know why Keion is similar to Frieren. All the German names in Frieren made every Keion fan feel right at home. Everything is overall very hopeful, even in Slow Loop, Super Cup or Natsume's Book of Friends. Our main characters start at their lowest point, but they pick up a new hobby or a fate has other plans for them, and they're thrusted into a new adventure. The way Iyashikeis deal with grief is very human, and what makes it important is not that it does not define the characters. No character here is ever solely defined, but what they lost, but what they've gained through building new bonds and connections with all sorts of unique and interesting people and beyond. Another element that Frieren is praised upon is that seeming lack of any horny fanservice, and Iyashikei tend to be very similar in that regard. While there are some that definitely have it, you can be pretty confident that when you pick up an Iyashikei anime that you can get a fanservice-free experience. Iyashikei explores the best of humanity. Everyone is really nice and helpful, and no one is passing judgment. That doesn't mean there can't be an antagonist, but usually that is the force of nature. Sometimes natural, sometimes not. And even those that seem to be antagonists turn to be a friend more often than not. Speaking of nature, respecting your environment is a very strong theme of Iyashikei's and foreboding at points. Aria and Yokohama Shopping Log are the perfect examples, as it should not take you too long to figure out what sank Venice and Yokohama. They're not preachy about it, and both of these shows respect you enough to make the connection yourself. The animation also tends to be really good, and that seems to be a trend with some slice of life anime. Heck, just this season, this romance anime, The Invisible Man and his soon-to-be wife had a great action sequence out of nowhere, alongside a season filled with great character animation, namely on our female lead's behalf. To be fair, they didn't have to do much work with the male lead. I guess I should use this as a jumping point and list some of the Iyashikei anime you should check out if you enjoy Frieren, alongside some that are not Iyashikei, but you could still enjoy those. If you don't care about the recommendations, then jump into the conclusion at the end of the video, but you should stay because I will gush about Super Cup. Then again, there is no guarantee you will enjoy any of the anime mentioned here, and you might want something completely different. Perhaps a little bit of demon propaganda in the form of "It's time for torture, princess." Before all that though, we have to talk about the cute girls doing cute things in the room. Iyashikeis and cute girls doing cute things exist under the same slice of life umbrella, and they do overlap a lot, but it would be a mistake to say that they're the same. Cute girls doing cute things is surprisingly a rather divisive theme, and not just in how you could make an argument that 90% of anime with female ensemble cast could be classified as such. I do struggle sometimes with trying to reason why a place further than universe is classified as cute girls doing cute things in Mal, but Girls/Door is not. Why one but not the other? The correct answer is that Yorimoi should not be classified as such. Some might even swear off watching Yorimoi because of that label. That might come from the preconceived notion that all cute girls doing cute things anime are just moblobs, which couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, there are many mochi faces with big bug eyes, but if you don't vibe with that style, then that's completely fine. Some anime fans might actually be surprised when they do watch a show that's just cute girls doing cute things and wonder why do they like it. It's just girls doing stuff. Now if you actually check what the target demographic for the original material is like, for example Keion, which in this case is seinen, ergo adult men. So it's no wonder why you like these silly blobs. They were literally made for you in mind. This can lead to a rather regressive mindset, where someone might dismiss the entire team or label as not for them and do a disservice to themselves by signaling that they do not usually like this stuff, with cute girls, but the one that they do like is different, because it's cute girls doing awesome things. Fuck, I hate that term. I'm getting off track again, so back to the topic. I bring this all up to say that just because a show has an Iyashikei tag on MAL doesn't mean that it's an auto-recommend for any Frieren fan. For instance, the only worthwhile Fate anime is not something I would first recommend to any Frieren fan looking for something similar, but it's still great. I'm kidding, Fate fans, there is also Carnival Phantasm. Other examples I would say are Flying Witch, With You and the Rain, and Non-Iyashikei. All great anime, but perhaps not something that Frieren fans are exactly looking for. On the opposite end, just because a show has cute girls doing cute things tag on it, that doesn't mean that it's an auto-exclude for Frieren fans. Yorimoi being a great example. As for cute girls doing cute things plus Iyashikei, you might think K-On! And Eurocamp and other anime like Diary of Our Days at the Breakwater is the Order a Rabbit and Encouragement to Climb, which some call the peak of anime. These are of varying degrees of quality, and you might enjoy them immensely, but they don't give the same feeling as Frieren. We will however talk about some anime in here that do, including one of my all-time favorites. Why don't we get to the actual list then? And let's start out with one of my all-time favorites. One of the first pieces of Iyashikei media that should naturally come to your mind is Aria the Animation. Aria is a story, as you might have guessed from the title, about Akari, an Undine who dreams to becoming a prima gondola sailor, no relation, the ones who ferry tourists and locals around the waters of Neo Venezia in the planet Aqua, a planet formerly known as Mars, that has been terraformed into an ocean paradise. With her mentor Alicia and the cat owner of the Aria company, Aria, we follow her as she explores the city of Neo Venezia, mingling with the locals, befriending other company gondola Undines Aika and Alice. Oh yeah, outside of a couple of characters, all of our characters' name begins with an A. Aria is a very nostalgic series, as our characters spend time wondering what kind of place Manholm's Venice was, and if Neo Venezia can live up to it. It is said that Venice sank, and I wonder who did that. Maybe Aquaman. It might not surprise you, but Aria is a sci-fi show that mixes in some fantasy that emanates from the Neo Venezia and its feline inhabitants. Aria takes its time. It's melancholic, relaxing, funny, romantic, sorrowful, poignant, quiet, and most of all, sincere in its themes and characters. Aria the Origination, the third season, is one of my few 10 out of 10 anime, and I teared up during the ending. And the journey our characters went through is definitely the reason for it. It can be childish at points, but for every joke that doesn't land, there are many more quiet, contemplative moments that do. The opening deserves a special mention, as it's not the same animation each time, but when the opening plays, we see where our characters are heading for the events for this particular episode. MUSHI-SHI is probably the anime you most likely recognize here, and it has been one of the most stable recommendations for as long as the anime adaptation has existed, alongside certain cinema that we will get to later. MUSHI-SHI is a story of Kingo, a MUSHI-SHI, who acts like a traveling doctor/shaman that treats humans who have been dealing with a mushi, a sort of spirit that only the gifted can see. Mushi are like parasites that exist between life and death, and they're a vehicle that lets our characters deal with grief. Mushi are almost Lovecraftian, with their own motifs, but they can be just like anomalies in Roadside Picnic, where some peasant lets the curiosity get the best of them and they get janked 1,000 feet into the air. MUSHI-SHI is a relaxing show, but very haunting. As you might have guessed, some of these mushi are nightmare material. Kingo might seem like a loner, but he has a lot of compassion for humans and mushi alike. One way to read MUSHI-SHI is to see it as a critique of old traditions, as some of our victims have been assigned to be married or, in more extreme case, to be sacrificed for a bountiful harvest. Kingo himself stands out with his very Western style of clothing, and you might be worried that MUSHI-SHI tells us that Western values are superior, but thankfully I didn't get that. MUSHI-SHI is also an episodic anime, as you can pop up any episode and get a complete story out of it. And you should, as the animation is absolutely stellar, and became the director Nakama Hiroshi's trademarked rotoscoping style, which you might have seen in Flowers of Evil or the only good episode of Uzumaki. But the music, and especially the background art, really set the mood for the show to follow, and you feel like you have been transported into the late 19th century Japan. And these mountainous trails also really sell how isolated some of these villages are, and how fear of the mushi can lead to those impacted by them to be shunned and isolated themselves. If Aria is not the first anime that pops into your mind when you think about Iyashikei, then Natsume's Book of Friends should be, unless you thought about Eurocamp. The story follows Natsume, a loner who has lost his parents and grandparents. It gets worse, as Natsume can see yokai that normal people can't, so no one believes him when he tells tales about them. His life changes when he gets a hold of his grandmother Reiko's Book of Friends, a collection of names that belong to the yokai that Reiko defeated. One problem for Natsume is that having the yokai's name gives ultimate power over them, and for that reason, multiple yokai want the book for themselves. This is not a shonen battle manga though, as Natsume willingly returns the names back to their rightful owners if they so desire. In exchange, Natsume gets a flashback of her grandmother obtaining the name in the first place, giving Natsume a connection to her grandmother by fixing her mistake. If you thought that those Himmel flashbacks were the best part of Frieren, then oh boy, Natsume's Book of Friends is made for you. A strong yokai named Madara joins Natsume, and together they spend time bonding and bringing kindness to yokai and people alike, and befriending each other. As we learn throughout the show, the yokai are pretty lonely as well. You should definitely at least try Natsume's Book of Friends, because if you vibe with it, there are 7 seasons waiting for you. Yokohama Shopping Log and Yokohama Kaiyet Country Cafe are 2-episode OVAs respectively, that adapt a small part of a 14-volume manga. We follow an android named Alpha, who oversees a cafe that her owner left for her when he went on a journey. This changes when another android, Kokone, delivers a camera and a message from the owner to Alpha for her, to start capture the life around Yokohama. The time we spend Alpha is very short, but the entire experience is very melancholic, nostalgic and foreboding, as we see the sunken remains of Yokohama, which definitely paints us an image of impending rising sea levels and the tragedies that befell Japan in the 90s. And it is a harrowing reminder to us that action needs to be taken before it's too late. Everyone is very pleasant, and the androids themselves feel very human, and there are even doctors that specialize in treating androids, like Alpha and Kokone. And the whole experience is giving me Apocalypse Hotel vibes. Want more of that episode 11 goodness? Well, come get yours at Yokohama, as there are multiple scenes where there ain't any background music or dialogue, just ambient sounds. Slight note though, that Yokohama can get a bit horny at times. There is a naked robot, and the way androids share information between each other, well, I think that I'll show you how it's done. Mr. Villain's Day Off tells us that pandas are the key to world peace, unless they are in Finland. Villain's Day Off is a story of an evil general who literally works for a black company trying to take over the earth and wipe out the human race. Thankfully, it seems that even this company has some day offs, so we can enjoy our general living slow and enjoying the simple things in life, mostly pandas. The show is very relaxing and relatable because I understand General. I would also want to destroy the human race after working for a week. Mr. Villain's Day Off is about the appreciation of simple things in life, but it can fit some grief in it as well. Namely with the Blue Ranger, whose father was the previous ranger, that never made it back from the mission. The rangers themselves have a really great fun family vibe. Side note, if you pause this video and went to watch This Time for Torture Princess, then you might enjoy this one as well. Pause the video again and come back here after you're done watching. Slow loop is interesting, because I knew one thing about it before I started watching. This anime has the first appearance of Bocce's number 1 and 2 fans. But for real though, slow loop is an Iyashikei plus cute girls doing cute things combo all about fishing. But don't confuse it with Diary of Our Days at the Breakwater, which is a cute girls doing cute things anime all about fishing. These similarities are superficial though, and you can also add a dash of Is the Order Rapid to slow loop, as Hiyori's dad is dead, and Koharu's mom and little brother are also dead, who all tragically passed away, leaving a hole in both of their families. From the last line, you might have guessed that Hiyori's mom and Koharu's dad got together, and you would be correct. They are now step-siblings who form a new family together and bond over fishing. There is a difference between Hiyori and Koharu though, as Hiyori's dad's death was slow, and they knew it was coming, while Koharu's mom and little brother died suddenly. Both of them deal with loss differently, as Koharu is very outgoing and quickly latches on to Hiyori, while Hiyori takes time to process everything, surprisingly a very thoughtful so, which you might have not believed from the first glance, and slow loop should be an exhibit A, why you shouldn't just a cute girls doing cute things anime such from their skin alone. Another possible candidate for the most well-known show in my recommendations is Girls Last Tour. This post-apocalyptic Iyashikei where Chito and Yuri travel along with their motorbike in this ruined civilization. Somber, foreboding, existential. Girls Last Tour is bleak while being a joy to watch, finding a meaning in an empty world. The world itself tells us the story what might have led us here, as the whole world seems to be built for war and efficiency above all else. The brutalist architecture and the metal hellscape don't seem inviting, but Chito and Yuri are here to experience all of it and have fun while doing so. Hakumei and Mikochi. Hakumei and Mikochi are here because I really like my two beans. This tale is a story of a little magical forest creatures and gnomes living together and exploring their little lives. Very old-timey fairy tale feel, and if you ever watched The World of David the Gnome, then this has the same vibe. I must also make the same conclusion that Hakumei and Mikochi are also based on true stories. I also get a huge urge to play Stardew Valley whenever I watch Hakumei and Mikochi, and that is because of the music and some of the magical spirits. While magical elements like aforementioned spirits do exist, the world of Hakumei and Mikochi is more technology focused, which is a bit of a rarity for a fantasy anime. Try it, you might be surprised. This is the part of the video where I spent my time gushing about Super Cup. Buckle up. When I started working on this video, I had not watched Super Cup, but now I have, and it is one of my all-time favorites. Super Cup is a story of Kokuma, who has no parents and lives alone in her very bland grey apartment, just going through the motions as a high school girl. A very lonely life, and she doesn't even bother heating up her microwave curry for lunch. This changes when she takes a detour from school and finds a little bike shop. Curiosity gets the better of her and she ends up falling in love with a Super Cup. One driving license later and she has her cup and her new journey begins. On the way she gets interest of one of the girls in her class, Reiko, who is big on all things cups related, and as the more experienced cup driver helps Kokuma get her bearings and they become friends. Okay, pretty standard right? Reiko and Kokuma are the bestest of friends after the second episode, and Kokuma is defined by her lack of parents and others show pity to her because of that. Heck no, there is no pity party for Kokuma, as her lack of parents is never the focus of the story, and other characters do not even bring that up, and it's so refreshing to witness. But Reiko is all Kenki over Kokuma. Heck no. I shall now demonstrate how their first encounter in classroom plays out after they become friends. Sup. Yo. That's it. It's so understated from what you expect in anime that you start to wonder if they're even friends. But they are, and the first interactions they have together are by having lunch, sitting on top of their cups. They do get comfortable around each other, but it takes multiple episodes. And by the end, they're like family, and that journey there is well earned. Super Cup is a chill show, which I didn't expect. I was thinking I would get something similar to Slow Loop, but vibe-wise, this is closer to Girls Last Tour. Kokuma's world is very dry, but whenever she succeeds, be it making a new friend, changing oil for the first time, or how scrappy she is, trying to find a budget options for her Super Cup, the entire world lights up with color, and we as the viewers are rewarded with a smile worth protecting. It truly brightens up your day. The distinct lack of background music in certain scenes also helps with the relaxed vibe. This show almost defines the lazy Sunday mornings. This whole anime is very relatable, as I really could understand Kokuma nerding out about her new Super Cup. Whenever I pick up something new, I get very obsessive and want to know everything about it. Super Cup is a barrage of constant small victories, as each episode furthers Kokuma's and Reiko's friendship alongside C, who joins up with the gang later. And it's just great seeing Kokuma becoming a mentor like Reiko to someone else. I honestly love this show, and outside of the first half of episode 11, I have no issues with it. And the second half of that episode saves it, as we finally see how far Kokuma has come, with her bleak and lonely home being filled with light and friends. She even pouts. It's almost a perfect show, or as close as an Iyashikei can be. Even the final monologue by Kokuma at the end is perfect way to end the season, as she recalls how it was not the Super Cup that made her a new person. It was her who made that decision, and the Super Cup was the vehicle that got her there. We need a second season and a Eurocamp collab as SAP. Super Cup is a masterpiece, and it has earned its place in my 3x3. I heckin' love this anime, and I'm considering getting a Super Cup myself. Go watch it. Well, that was a lot. I'm done with my Super Cup rush, and before we move on to the conclusion, I would like to briefly talk about few shows that are not Iyashikei, but scratch the same itch that Frieren did, that you might also enjoy, starting with, I already brought up Yorimoi, so I would be amiss if I didn't also mention it here. One of the greatest coming-of-age anime, as a group of girls take a journey to Antarctic. Everyone has their goals, but the heart of the show is Shirase, who is here to find any clues about her mom, who perished in an expedition years prior. These girls are alright. Violet Evergarden is a story of Violet, a tool for war, a doll who has no need for human emotions. After the war ends, and Violet lost her father figure, she embarks on a journey to become an auto doll, handling grief and learning what love means. These dolls are tasked with writing letters, as the literacy rate in this world is rather lacking. Violet Evergarden is gorgeously animated, as you should expect from Kyoto Animation, and you should also expect to feel emotionally devastated, especially after Violet really gets going, and almost every episode after the halfway point are all killer, no filler. You do have to suspend your disbelief a bit, since when Violet picks up her job as an auto doll, she is 14 years old war veteran, but it didn't really get in the way of my enjoyment. Just a word of warning, don't watch the second movie. I won't say that Usagi drops the ball, but it's close. Usagi Drop the anime is pretty chill actually, you should watch it. Wandering Witch, the journey of Elaina is well, first of all, I want to call Elaina Elaina, but on the more serious note, I have mixed feelings about this show. Elaina is a witch who is on a journey to explore as many interesting countries as possible, just like her witch idol once did. I do like Elaina when she is vain and full of herself, but whenever the show gets serious, the quality dips massively, and it has to do with the tonal shifts. I don't really mind if you have some goofy episodes and then a serious one, but the context makes it feel worse. The episode 3, The Girl as Pretty as Flower / Bottle of Happiness would be okay if episode 6, The Land of Truth Tellers, didn't exist in the form it does. And the first episode, while gorgeous, feels like Elaina is a completely different character in it, and the advice her mother lays out are ignored, even if Elaina walks away from trivial challenges but takes on a bigger challenges after. I guess I really just hate episode 6, but I also hate episode 9, A Deep Sorrow from the Past, which felt just pure shock value to me. Doesn't help that it's followed by a silly arc right after where Elaina literally unleashes the Nukitashi box. You could still try and watch it, because Elaina is a pretty divisive show, and you might like it way more than I. Another strike against Elaina is that I watched Kino's Journey, both the 2003 version and the 2017 reimagination, and oh boy, Kino is cinema. Kino is on a journey with her motorrad Hermes, and she visits several countries that have weird rules and cultures that are often dystopian. The 2003 version has this film grain filter, and the cinematography is really bold, as nothing ever felt flat. 2017 is good too, but the 2003 version is a classic for a reason. They do share some of the same stories, like the Kind Land, Coliseum, and Kino's backstory, but I felt that 2003 version was more subdued and interesting compared to the newer remake. It's philosophical, contemplative, and Kino herself is a complicated character that will prioritize her safety first, but will take action if he sees injustice that she can deal with. As a side note, the first episode in 2003 version has a similar setup as the episode 6 in Wonder Witch, but the way Kino's journey handles it is way more mature and depressing, but with a bit of hope at the end. Kino's Journey is a classic, and like I alluded earlier when describing MUSHI-SHI, I can finally leave my adolescent dream and recommend both Kino's Journey and MUSHI-SHI to you. I just need to find a way to fit in Full Metal Panic and Spice and Wolf. Oh wait, well I should mention Spice and Wolf, but only the recent remake because I haven't actually watched the old adaptation. I should get on that someday. The wise wolf Holo joins up with a traveling merchant Lawrence, and they take on a journey filled with lessons in economics, folk tales, and some punning romance between Holo and Lawrence. A long-living being traveling alongside a human. Sounds like a certain elf, I know. Let's talk about the movie for a change. And Maquia, When the Promised Flower Blooms, a PA Works original, is a story of Maquia and Iorf, who are these long-living humans that are pretty much elves, with a different name and without the pointy ears. A muse might be a better example, now that I think about it. The heart of the story is Maquia picking up a baby at the beginning of the movie and being a mother to this child. As the time goes on, the child ages while she looks as young as when she first met the boy. If you want to see a movie that goes through a sometimes fan-theorized story between Frieren and Fern, then Maquia is your fix. And much like those fan theories, it will get emotional. To Your Eternity is a story about an orb who is on a quest to experience life as much as possible, no matter how many times it takes, and for a reason that are shrouded in mystery. Fu can take on many forms, and throughout the journey, Fu unlocks several of them. Fu meets a lot of people, animals and villains throughout his journey, and Fu is seemingly immortal. The first two arcs slap hard, but the third one was a bit of a step down, outside of the villain who was just so entertaining. What a bastard. To be fair, I only watched the first season, and since the third season just wrapped up, so I wouldn't know how the story progresses, but bear with me as I say that season 1 is still a good time. Okay, last one, but certainly not the least, because Haibane Renmei is one of my all-time favorites. Another one of those anime that was recommended non-stop, but has fallen out of favor over the years. But Haibane Renmei is a classic, and proves that smoking angels are cool. I was going to call it a cult classic, but Haibane Renmei actually has more MAL members than Kino's Journey, so I can't really call it that. The story centers around Raka, a newly born Haibane, who are beings trapped in this purgatory limbo of sorts. That doesn't seem that out of ordinary, but it has huge walls surrounding the countryside. Haibane Renmei is a story of dealing with loss and handling grief and forgiveness, and while our characters deal with that in some amounts, it's our two mains, Reki and Raka, who form the emotional core of the show, and everything loops back to their relationship. The final episode is one of my favorite episodes ever, and it really ties everything together beautifully, and without spoiling too much, it ends with both Reki and Raka just like it started. Haibane Renmei strikes a perfect balance by showing just enough while still leaving some questions open for your own interpretation. Seriously, give it a watch if you haven't. The designs also might seem familiar, as they are made by Yoshitoshi Abe, the writer for Haibane Renmei, who also created the original character designs for Serial Experiments Lane. Anyway, let's end this video. My goal for this video was to introduce you to a genre that you might have never heard about or passed on, because you felt like it was not for you. I wanted to perhaps to change your mind and to use Frieren as a jumping point to show how they are and will be anime like Frieren, so we should take solace in that. Don't mistake that for me to try and downplay Frieren. I never meant to take anything away from Frieren, as I truly enjoy watching this elf and her grandchildren having a grand old adventure, and I wanted to share some of my all-time favorite anime that are like Frieren, before someone naively starts watching Mushoku Tensei because it's fantasy just like Frieren. That's like opening an email that you think it's related to your work and getting hit by, good, you opened this message. I'm also definitely not the final arbiter of Iyashikeis, as I haven't watched My New Boss is Goofy, played Cool Guys, Encouragement of Climb, Let's Make a Mach 2, Yoru no Kuni, Amanchu, Tanaka-kun is Always Listless, Tamako Market, One Off, You and Me, Mokke, Sketchbook, Full Colors, and Hidamari Sketch. So even though I really love this genre, I still have tons of shows just waiting for me. Yoru no Kuni actually looks like something that might scratch the Frieren itch. I'll get back on that after I finish this video. I allude at the very beginning that Frieren lacks that horny fanservice that anime sometimes fairly and sometimes unfairly gets labeled as, but to be honest, there is a lot of fanservice free anime airing at the same time as Frieren Season 2. When I'm looking at my watchlist for winter 2026, I'd say that almost half of the shows have no horny fanservice in them, so that label is mostly unfair. If that sort of anime actually interests you, then there are my anime list interest tags that list anime without any fanservice. I spoke of the desire for no fanservice in anime, but on the flip side, this doesn't mean that ecchi anime aren't getting made. Just top of my head, Chained Soldier, 2.5 dimensional seduction, the cat one, Putti Son Takamae-san, Gushing Over Magical Girls, Nugitashi, Does It Count If You Do with an Android anime, and all the other shows that get put on Ocean Whale. Some of these are even good. One of them is great. Another shout out I want to give are Anilist recommendations, and I used them while making this video. To Your Eternity being one show that I watched for this video because of Anilist. But they aren't perfect, and a lot of recommendations seem to be shows that are aired at the same time, and they're not exactly wrong. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of just brigading JoJo's Steel Ball Run with Umamusume. Come on guys, I love Umamusume, more than JoJo even, but it's nothing like JoJo. Going back to the proper Anilist recommendations, I'm definitely not going to say that the Apothecary Diaries would be a bad anime to watch after Frieren. You can just watch Dungeon Meshi and Witch Hat Atelier, just make sure to watch Journal with Witch, I beg of you. I need a second season, please. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found new anime to watch. And remember, Himmel the hero would not approve my anime list review bombing, and he would be very disappointed in you if he found out. Speaking of 1995 and Iyashikeis, that was also a terrible year for JRA, and you should probably figure out why when I show this image of Rice Shower and Takarazuka Kinen. Not even the most depressing story from JRA in the 90s. If you're curious, check out what happened in 1998 to Ines Fuji's owner. Speaking of Umamusume, I'm surprised that Cygames hasn't done an Iyashikei series yet. They were one of my favorite parts in Season 3. You could focus on the post-retirement of certain horses, such as Stay Gold Travel Program, Manhattan Cafe's Barista Life, and Tamamo Cross Being Poor.